It is officially 9:02 a.m., and we will be calling our Affordable Housing Advisory Board meeting to order. It's October 29th at 9 a.m., and yes, good morning.
Time late.
It's okay. We're officially calling the meeting to order. Let's start off with a roll call. And we will announce the members in the order that I see under members. Today, do you have Mark Bueller present?
Here.
Andrew Gallagher.
Present.
Mariel Fierro.
Present.
Morning. Christina Gentry, present. Hai Sung.
Present.
Elizabeth.
Present.
Monty Sokup.
Here.
And Leah Roslin. Good morning. So at this point, I will hand the meeting over to Leah Roslin, our housing administrator, for engagement and public comment rules.
Thank you, Christina. Good morning, everyone. I have a few housekeeping items for this hybrid meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. Please remember to mute yourself during the meeting when you are not speaking. The chat function for this public meeting is disabled. All chats will go directly to me. Unless you are participating during the meeting, please turn your video off. This allows the active meeting participants to be seen on the screen. You will still be able to hear the meeting. When you are participating, please turn your video on. If you have any trouble, you can send me a chat. The city reserves the right to mute people or to turn individual videos off to minimize distractions during the meeting. And now I'll make a few notes on public comment. When the chair calls for public comment, individuals attending in person should approach the podium to indicate they wish to speak. The podium can be raised and lowered, and we encourage you to use this feature to ensure your comments are heard. Individuals participating via Zoom should use the raise hand function to indicate they wish to speak. Please leave your virtual hand raised until you are called on. Individuals will be called on in the order they appear on the meeting host screen. Please state your name before speaking. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Thank you, and now I'll turn the meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you, Leah. And our next agenda item is to Agenda A, approve the minutes. We'll consider approval of the meeting minutes of October 16th, 2024. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I have a first. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been approved and seconded. I will take a vote and call roll to vote on that approval. Mark Bueller.
Aye.
Andrew Gallagher.
Aye.
Mariel Fierro.
Aye.
Christina Gentry. Aye. Hai Sung Han.
Aye.
Elizabeth O'Neill.
Aye.
Monty Sokup.
Aye.
I don't need to call your name, but I think it's on there for the members.
Yeah.
All right, so motion passes 7-0 with no abstentions. Our next agenda item will be for public comment. And in this space, we will allow public comments either from online. And do we have any public comment from online? I see that we do. Okay, Steve Ozark.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I wanted to thank you all. Many have been working a long time, and for the new members who joined, I'm really heartened by this group. It looks like a really powerful voice to carry forward to get our renewal on affordable housing and continue the good work that so many have worked on for decades. I just wanted a moment of your time to bring up the essential essence of permanent affordable units to our community. This body is uniquely qualified to bring that message to the community of that urgency and importance and to make that happen. I know that LIHTC and other grants are not permissible to become permanent, and you'll even hear some very knowledgeable people say that 30 years is the life of a house, and so 30 years is good enough. But as we know in Lawrence, we suffer from a lack of land with the river binding us, and also the college causing a great discrepancy in the affordability of rentals and purchase units, so that we have very little vacancy. You guys know all these facts, but the reality is when these houses sunset in 15 or 30 years, The tragedy will be at that point of all those families being displaced from their once affordable units, those going to market value, and how possibly in that time we're going to have the land or the ability to create permanence later. I think of Shannon Ori at one of our meetings a few years ago where she came in the day that 35 families were being displaced. 35 families. You've got approval for projects that are in the hundreds of units that have a sunset date. And Shannon was truly distressed at the crisis that these families faced, that they suddenly did not have an affordable place to live with 35 families. While it helps us now in our generation to have affordable housing for this generation, if this body does not find that focus and that voice to ask each submitting petition for your funding, how many units will be made affordable? I'm afraid for the generations ahead of us, what a crisis will be in our community. The study that was done some years ago showed that of the top 15 college towns in the Midwest, we are second worst in affordability of units versus income rate, second to Boulder, Colorado. And Boulder has some innovative programs such as charging for height. If you get something higher up, you pay a density unit. We've got to find affordability, and I remember that when Mr. Kresnick's project was approved for the 9th Street corridor, a few of us stood up and said, we need these to be affordable units. And on the spot, while making his presentation, he made 5 units affordable. Whether that carried forward or not, I'm not certain, but I know we were able to ask Mr. Kresnick to make 5 units permanent of that 9th Street corridor approval. And that's what I'm asking you to consider in each proposal, because again, as I say, talk to Shannon Ori. She might say units aren't important for permanence, but we know that land is extremely valuable, and we know this will create a hardship in the future. I just imagine those days when these things sunset for hundreds of families, what possibly will be happening in our community. I'd ask you to ask for permanence in each of your proposals, and I thank you so very, very much for your dedicated work and expertise in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I see that we have another person online for comment, Stephen Watts.
Hi, I appreciate this time. I simply want to point out to the Affordable Housing Advisory Board that there is some illegitimacy to the process right now because there continues to be a member on it that is not a part of the Lawrence community in any way with respect to ownership of property or business. This member needs to be removed from the Affordable Housing Advisory Board in order for the legitimate process to continue forward. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Okay. Are there any additional comments online? Are there any comments in the building? Yes.
Thank you. Tony Kresnick. Wanted to address the first comment that was made regarding permanent affordability. If permanent affordability is defined by anything other than 30 years, again, the initial 15-year compliance period plus the voluntary 15-year compliance period, in many cases here in the flyover states, it actually has a negative impact. And the reason being is because when we underwrite these projects, you need to underwrite at a 2% income escalator and a 3% expense escalator. However, unfortunately, we all know in this room that especially over the last 4 years, that oftentimes looks like a 1% income escalator and maybe as high as a 5, 6, 7% expense escalator. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is in order to weather that storm, oftentimes you have to raise rents for the entirety of the 30-year compliance period. So that's one statement that I would make. Another statement I would make, you guys have an application before you that is requesting $19,000 in some money. Keep in mind that project, national award-winning project, that was built 13 years ago, and it's already needing additional renovation. It will need extensive renovation 5 years from now. It might not even make it to year 30. That's why every single state that we work in, such as the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, on their website, they have qualified allocation plans where in year 16, not 26, not 36, in year 16, they understand that these projects oftentimes do need to be renovated, and they have a special set aside for the additional tax credits. So I just wanted to make mention of that. We work on these projects all over the place. We're working on the President Place Apartments in Salina, Kansas. That is in year 17. We just purchased that project. Year 17, everybody's getting ready to be removed from the property because it needs extensive renovation. They're not even going to be able to live through the renovations. So while permanent affordability is wonderful, unless the city of Lawrence or the state of Kansas can guarantee that those funds will be there again and again and again, these projects unfortunately do only have 20 years, maybe 30 tops. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any additional comments in the room or online? Could you address the comment about the board member as you did? Sure.
Sure. This is Leah Roseland, Affordable Housing Administrator. So I'm just, and the chair had asked me to follow up on one of the comments with the language from Resolution 7472, which establishes the policy regarding operations and conduct of advisory boards for the City of Lawrence. Let's see, under Section 5, membership, Section 5BI says exceptions to the foregoing being members of advisory boards must either reside within city limits or own a business within city limits. 5BI states exceptions to the foregoing may be made from time to time, in which case the reasons for the appointment and the exception should be stated. The exception is that the member is an expert in affordable housing, teaches housing policy, and is an active member of our community as a professor of KU. I could go on and on about the assets that she adds to the board, including having her class do a housing study for the City of Lawrence, which will provide a great benefit, and being one of the, holding such incredible expertise for this topic, and we're really grateful for your service, so thank you.
The board doesn't make that decision, the town commission does.
I'm sorry,
Thank you.
Are there any additional comments online or in the building? Okay. Seeing none, I move that we move on to our agenda items. So under C, agenda items, number 1, discuss 2025 Affordable Housing Trust Fund project applications. And we'll go in the order that they are listed here, and we'll start with the A, new development project applications. Let's go ahead and look at 9 Lofts, Flint Hills. And I'm not sure if we need to open that application up, if we need to have discussion on any items. And we also, I'm sorry, Marielle has raised her hand. Marielle, please.
Christina, this is Vice Chair Mariel Perredo. Hello, board, good morning. Before we begin, just as a formality, I do need to formally recuse myself as there are 2 applications that I sit on the board for them. So good luck, fellow members. I hope this is a wonderful discussion. I'm excited to hear what comes of it, and I'm excited for the voting later on. But good luck to everyone who applied, and I'm excited to hear your conversation, and I'm deeply appreciative for your work and allowing me to recuse myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariel. Your expertise will be missed here, but we would definitely take that in consideration as we're examining all the applications. So,
Madam Chairman, did Steve Watts still has his hands up?
yeah. So what we've just, and I'm not saying what we've decided, but as board chair, and I feel also that we have public comment that we have given Stephen Watson and others too. We've got a very lengthy item discussions of agenda items. I feel that Stephen Watts has given comment and public comment and in time, and I feel responsible that we move on to our agenda items and discussion.
Thank you.
Comment is limited to 3 minutes, and he got us 3 minutes.
Thanks.
Okay. Moving on, we'll move on to 9 Lofts project applications. Are we looking at the Yes, we're going to look at all of the applications, letters, and go through and have discussion on each of them as allowable. Monty?
Chairman, yeah, thank you. I would just ask, I know that they had the state LIHTC projects were awarded. Can we, before we start, can we list which projects were actually awarded LIHTC and which ones were deferred to the coming year? Do we have that information?
I will need to pull it up real quick.
Yeah. I mean, I remember from looking at it myself that the Lawrence Douglas County Housing Authority, the Delmar Place was awarded, if I recall correctly, but I can't remember what other ones were.
So 2024 allocations. Let's see, sorry. The only one that we have an application for is the
Flint Hills, New Hampshire Street Lofts. And Flint Hills East Heights is the LIHTC project.
no, we're looking at the awards.
Okay.
Yeah, the Peaks did not apply for trust funds, so none of the applicants.
So the only one is the Delmar?
I didn't see that Delmar Place was
It's not
awarded
on there?
LIHTCs.
I thought it was on for,
Oh, it is?
it is. I was sure that one was on.
Syndicator commitment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
So
So
just of the applications we have, Delmar has been awarded the LIHTC funding. The others would still be applying for funding at a next round.
so,
A fair statement? Just want to clarify that.
so that, to me, that begs a question. Do we know, after we made our awards like last year, do we have an update on how they've done at the LIHTC door?
That information's available. It's on that same website that, is the Housing Authority that sends that? I can't remember. who sent it.
HRC?
HRC, sent it out. So, like last year, the project, one of the projects we awarded to was awarded a LIHTC fund. It was the senior housing, one of the senior housing projects. I just happened to see that as I thumbed through there.
Okay.
But we can get that information. I don't have it off the top of my head, but
Okay.
that
Yeah.
information is available.
Okay.
Of projects like that we awarded funds to, because often we've been asked to award funds because it helps their LIHTC application,
Sure.
right? To have local funding already secured. So I'm assuming, and I was going to be a question today, that when we do that, and Leah maybe can answer this, when we fund something, it's contingent upon them getting the LIHTC funding. So that, we're in if they get the funding.
Okay.
What I'd hate to see is us to give somebody $100,000 or whatever that number is. They go spend that money working on the project, and then they don't get a LIHTC project, and then there's not a project.
Okay.
Can that happen?
That's why I was just going to try to clarify that today, or get clarification, that if we do award something that doesn't have the LIHTC funding yet, that our funds aren't spent until there is actually a project that is going to be built.
Okay.
And then the other side of that is, because there's only one, we shouldn't necessarily withhold approval on projects that have yet to make application and have not.
I agree. No, we should
Okay.
not.
Okay.
That is, I think, again, if you have the local funding, it helps your LIHTC application.
Correct.
And we've done that in the past.
Yeah, and I
I'm
agree
not
with this
suggesting-
conversation.
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah, I agree with this conversation, taking, and holding space for that. I would like to suggest,
Yeah.
for time's sake and to move us forward, that we do discover the strengths and the weaknesses, and we talk in items of discussion of each of the projects now, until we can get some updated information that you're searching for, Monty.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for giving me the time.
No worries.
If I can just, I'm sorry, Chair. I saw that Galal from the Housing Authority put in the chat that KHRC does not have a LIHTC application. That was not my thinking either. The Housing Authority does not for Delmar Place. Delmar Place was funded by ARPA funds, county funds, and Housing Authority reserves. Thank you for that clarification, Galal.
Clarification.
And can I quickly say that it's not just the Delmar, there are 2 others
Yeah.
that has that LIHTC application.
We do.
Yes, with
Yeah.
applications, and yes.
Applications, yeah.
So thank you for that. We'll move on to 9 Del Lofts, and we'll discover the strengths and weaknesses from that application, and we'll have discussion.
One question that I had, or a point of discussion, is I know there were several target populations identified for this project, one of them being families with minor children. However, when I looked at it, I noticed that they were all 1-bedroom units, and myself being a person with minor children, I'm trying to understand how families with minor children would reside in safely and comfortably in a 1-bedroom unit. I suppose that a home with a newborn or an infant may be able to for a short period of time, but doesn't seem to be a sustainable housing for them. So that was one question or concern that I had regarding selection of that target population.
Okay. And just for clarity, the 9 Del Lofts submitted a request for a partnership with City of Lawrence for a mixed-use affordable housing development in East Lawrence. Previous applications have been awarded in 2020, 2022, and 2023. This will be new construction, and the request is for $740,000. Any more discussion on this?
I just did, I mean, I have this maybe outside the metric, but I always look at, so there's 51 units, 36 affordable, 23 market, so it's a mixed income building, which could be positive. The request is for $20,500 per bed, if that's a metric that you like to use. I always kind of like look at all these things and kind of go, what are we getting for dollar if we're trying to generate beds? How much does every bed cost? And if you look at one of these projects, it's like $70,000 per bed, so, I mean, and some of them are, a few $100s per bed. So it's just one metric that I'm not sure we have everything on it's probably on our spreadsheet.
Question on that, is that 20,000 per affordably priced?
Yes, affordable bed.
Okay.
Affordable bed, not
Just
total
clarifying.
bed. Yeah. Just one of the metrics you'll hear from me on every project. Like it or
Good.
not.
I'm glad you're doing the math.
Yeah.
Question, and this is related to this application, but it also applies to other, and I think it just to increase my understanding, the applications note like having, 2 to 3 usually units that are ADA accessible. And it's not clear to me if those are being reserved specifically as affordable units or if they are
Market rate one.
possible for market rate as well, if they're being reserved for people needing accommodations, or if they're just units that are ADA accessible, and if it happens to be that someone applies at the right time that has that need, they receive it. So I guess just in general, I think for this application and perhaps others, I'm unclear on, I guess, the holding of those accessible spaces for people who need the accessibility accommodations, as well as if they are held for affordable units.
Would
For
you
the
like-
Delmar, they said 3 units would be affordable and accessible.
Affordable and accessible?
Yeah,
Not, okay,
that's section 4, question
Okay.
number 1.
okay, thank you.
So what I have is they'll be creating 37 affordable housing units, and 3 of those will be
Okay.
for persons with disabilities.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And similarly to you, families with minor children, I see 1-bedrooms rented for multifamily. I'm also concerned about that 1-bedroom being for multifamily. I'm a proponent of family building. These are apartments. We definitely need apartments I'm also, not a proponent of one-bedrooms, and advancing that too, but I do know that we need those. So additionally, my concern is to offer families with minor children a one-bedroom apartment doesn't seem to fit the dynamics of a family unit structure that's needed.
I struggled with that question as well, because I think it was interpreted two different ways. I think some applications interpreted that question, who can this project serve? And then some interpret it, who are we actually targeting to live, are we targeting specifically seniors? And so they answered it, if you targeted somebody, you answered one or two demographics and you got a low score. And if you said, well, we're open to anybody, you got a 20 because you checked every box. I found it very difficult.
It was.
What I ended up doing personally was kind of scoring everybody close to the middle, because I thought the question was interpreted so differently by everyone that it really wasn't a reflection of what the application was.
It could, right?
It could,
but then also there's some numbers here. 37
Right.
affordable housing units, and
Right.
3 would be persons with disabilities. So they did do a dissection of what that would
The
look like.
section, right. I found that with all of them, but it was just a difficult question for me.
So you made your scoring somewhat neutral.
Somewhat neutral on that everybody's targeting one of the demographics we're looking at. That's how I personally saw them. I'm not suggesting that's the right way to do.
I relied too on how this project will invest in community engagement, and it relies heavily on community partners. I'm curious about the review of the Historic Resources Commission, and if that was something that was given approval, or if there was any examples of which this project could be more or is the best at preserving historic resources in our community, as far as buildings and architecture and structure. But I didn't know if anyone had a review on that yet. Has there been a review by the Historic Resources Commission, or do we have a Historic Resources Commission anymore that exists?
We do,
We
but
do.
that would
Okay.
come later in the development.
Okay,
Yeah, so they'll have to submit
that'll be later on down
plans,
the line.
and then that's part of the site review process because it's in that environment.
Okay.
But that's not a criteria, sorry,
It's not a
that's not a
criteria.
criteria that the AHAB uses to evaluate.
Right.
So,
Is there a discussion on it having no deed in hand? Is that in any way a barrier to any of the things that we want to approve or looking for approval? Does that prevent approval for some, or give a pause for approval if there's no deed in hand? Or is that not a consideration that we're making? Just bringing up some
Yeah,
talking
no,
points
yeah.
maybe to consider.
Yeah. It doesn't cause me great concern if you had two projects and one was, the land was under control and everything else equal and the other not, then that might be a factor, but I don't consider that a huge issue. I mean, there are a lot of projects that at this stage maybe don't have 100% land control.
this is,
I wouldn't-
oh, I'm sorry.
I wouldn't be overly concerned. Certainly it's a concern, but it's not, to me, not a make or break thing.
Yeah, this is Leah Roseland. Just as a reminder that the trust funds can also support acquisition of land for affordable housing, in which case there would not be a deed in hand. So that's not a disqualifying criteria, more so so the board has an indication of where the project is in terms of its stage, how long it will take for development. We're out of time for that. I'll move on to the next one.
We're out of time for that. And just for context in the beginning, we will have 15 minutes of discussion for each.
Actually, now we'll have 5.
Now we'll have 5 minutes of discussion for each of the applicants. So yeah, let's make sure they count and we get these good timing meeting and talking points in. Okay.
Christina, if I may, I'm sorry, just wanted to point it out to the board as well that the key project element charts is on the screen. So I would suggest that these are the types of categories that the board might be interested in discussing, since these are sort of the the things that we look at in terms of project prioritization. So if you have questions about what's being requested, the number of units, et cetera, it's up on the screen.
Thank you for creating
Yeah.
that. No problem. That helps us construct a good dialogue. Okay, we're going to be moving on and give East Heights Flint Hills a discussion for 5 minutes. This is a mixed-use housing development in East Lawrence. Applicant has requested $660,000. This is new low-income housing tax credit project. Is there any discussion on this application?
I just wanted to say that I think this is one of few, if not the only, that's got 2 and 3 bedroom housings as part of the project. And I think that, if I remember correctly, that was one area that, in terms of our KPIs or what our targets for success look like, we were struggling with in previous years in growing affordable multi-bedroom homes. So I do like that about this project quite a bit.
Going down, we see that the 2-bedroom for rent prices will be between $1,200 and $1,300 a month. 5% developer fees or admin fees added.
Go.
I'll add my matrix. Metrics, 60 total units, 33 affordable. So again, a mixed income neighborhood, which is good, right? Properties under contract with 3 years to close. 50% of these units are 3-bedroom, about $20,000 per unit. And then this project also provides the land for a daycare, not a building, not an improvement, just the land for the daycare. At the end of this project, I think it was 30-year affordability. It wasn't permanent. So 30-year affordability, and then those assets basically all go to the developer and they can be sold or whatever into the market.
Do you have the price per bed if the 2 and 3 bedrooms are 1 bed per room?
Well, I just went, they said there were 33 affordable beds on this project.
Okay.
I didn't dig down to see
No, yeah.
how deep that was, but
And did you know the price per bed?
yeah, 20,000
Thanks.
per unit. I said unit, probably.
Gotcha.
Not bed.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I also significantly, I like this project. We had this project come to us before, and I like that it has more bite and grit to it now. There are 15 units that are going to be serving 80% less AMI. Is that what I have down here? Yeah. And there are 23 units that will be serving those between 40 and 60% AMI. That's significant. That reaches some of the target goals that we've had, and we have for AHAB and for the city. So yeah, there'd be 14 3-bedrooms at $1,250 a month projected.
Madam Chairman, will we have time, we're talking about each individual project, will we have time at the end to talk about general questions?
Yeah, I think for this time, we'll have 5 minutes of discussion for each
Okay.
in a group, and then we'll go into
All right,
a
I'll
deeper discussion.
I'll hold it till then, thanks.
Yeah. Is there any additional comments on the Flint Hills East Heights application?
So I'm correct in remembering that I believe, Monty, you said that this is the property that has the up to 3 years to close, correct? Okay. I think that's the only thing that gives me a little pause on this one is questioning the timeline of, the unclear timeline of this project. I'm not sure if they're waiting just on our possible funds and determination to be ready to close, or if there's other factors that are still being weighed and considered and that it could extend the timeline.
So one thing to note, this would probably be a LIHTC application fund, so they would go into next year's
Okay.
process, so they wouldn't learn about their LIHTC funding until about this time next year. So
Okay.
there's 1 year of the 3.
Okay.
So they're not going to obviously commit until they know they've got a project, and they won't have a project without a LIHTC
Right.
fund.
Okay.
I believe they have a stable seller
Yeah.
in that, 3 years is a long time to do anything. But I think they have a seller that wants to see the project occur too. And so
Yeah.
I'm sure there's option payments and stuff.
Okay. That is time, that is okay. I like that thing, it keeps me honest. So that is our 5 minutes on East Heights. Moving on to New Hampshire Street Lofts, Flint Hills. Flint Hills, New Hampshire Street Lofts 2 is a new mixed-use affordable housing development. It offers one 4-story elevator-serviced mid-rise residential building with ground floor commercial space. They are requesting $600,000 for new construction. This is also a LIHTC project, multifamily development, and it will increase by 42 units occupancy.
30 of which are affordable.
Yeah.
The per unit affordable is 14,300. The land's owned, it's properly zoned, so those are pluses.
Right. Shovel-ready, no infill deed, 30 years rental property, 33 one-bedrooms, and 3 two-bedrooms it will offer.
Are the 2 bedrooms marked as affordable?
Yes.
$1,200 and $1,300 a month.
So most are studios or one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, similar to the, I'm sorry.
I thought this was an interesting project.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, we've got
There's some things I like about it. Anyway, just
Okay. Anyone else have discussion on this project? Okay. All right, well, we'll move on to our next application, which is the Delmar Place, Lawrence Douglas County Housing Authority's new development. They're needing a water or fire line hydrant, requesting $200,000. This building serves senior low income. Background is that part of the Clinton Place expansion project, which aims to provide 32 one-bedroom units. The land is owned by Lawrence Douglas County Housing Authority, and they have 6 fully accessible units. Not sure why I wrote that down, but I thought that was important to note. The deed is in perpetuity, and remain dedicated to low-income seniors. Yeah, any discussion on that?
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
In a way, we have two requests that I call ups, maintenance, kind of outside our, I don't know if it's outside our bailiwick, but, there's nobody I'd rather help. Question is, we have $4 million with $1.2 million in the budget. So are there alternatives to fill in that $200,000 gap is my big question. I want to do it. I'm mad at the city, but too bad for me.
Is that a question for the applicant?
Yeah, if they could answer it, what alternatives do they have if we can't help?
Do we have the applicant online to answer some of this?
Galals.
I think Galal was here with us a moment.
He wrote,
Okay.
we have no alternative resources at this time.
I believe previously they communicated that the alternative was having to decrease the number of units. I think by 2, if I'm recalling correctly. And so there'd be 2 fewer units in order to account for this increased cost.
I don't
This is Galal Obeid with the Housing Authority. That is the cost that was given to us by the design and architect team. That would be the alternative choice, but I know that Shannon is really against that idea, especially since we've paid for all the designs and everything is kind of set and we've hit the ground. So our goal is to find this $200,000, and we're hoping that we can get it from rehab, and if not, we will continue to look at other sources.
I'm going to add my 2 cents here. I mean, when you look at the project, this is a rock star project. It's permanently affordable. We're talking about $6,000-ish a unit of subsidy. 32 units, all affordable. They've broken ground on this project. So, you know, let's tell you, my inclination is to maybe dedicate 150 to this. I'm thinking they can probably fundraise, do something for the other 50. This is the estimated cost of this thing, it might come less. That's just my gut feeling. And we put 32 more units in our court of having subsidized and delivered, you know, for relatively low. This is one of the for sure projects on this list.
Right. And is do you calculate your unit cost on the 150 in your mind, or the 200?
200, at $200,000, it's $6,250.
Got it.
So
Thanks.
6,000-ish a unit would get us,
Be even a little less.
that's how I read this.
I understand.
But, you know, certainly everybody, and I agree, I wish, to goodness sakes, the city had a different way. If we had infrastructure dollars or something like that, like we've had in the past, this would have been a prime candidate. This was really infrastructure to get this project underway. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Well, I had 100 on it, only because we don't have enough money.
Yeah, and, you know,
Yeah.
that's just kind of my thought
I get it.
process. But, again,
Yeah. And we'll be in that negotiating
Right.
the dollars at our next
Right.
meeting. But that's something to take in consideration for
Yeah.
sure. Okay. We've got another minute. Do we want to have more discussion, or should we move on to the next applicant?
Let's move on.
Okay, moving on. This will be the last new development project application that we have to consider. This will be Birchwood Flats, TJK Incorporated. This is a new construction. It's a 20-unit multifamily mixed-rate infill development. It's located at the northwest corner of 19th and Tennessee. There'll be 12 market rate units. 80% will be serving 60 to 80% AMI with those units. There'll be 8 newly affordable units proposed, and they are requesting $600,000. Is there any discussion on this applicant or application?
Again, they are all one-bedroom apartment, right?
Yes.
So not necessarily serving families.
Yeah, $600,000 for 8 affordable units.
it's $75,000 a
Yeah.
unit, a bed.
Yeah.
That's a
Don't-
big ask for 30 years of affordability.
And we didn't really, we got a different answer to our question, did we not?
Right, these are not going to be for sale products. These would be products that, the way I read that, Leah, you correct me if I'm wrong, I read the email to say, we're providing 30 years of affordability, then we own the unit and we will sell them at market. So we're basically, would be providing a $75,000 subsidy to get 30 year, per bed, to get 30 years of affordability. I mean, we have so many other projects that are 6,000, 20,000 to get the same net result for 30 years. Personally, I have trouble with it. I applaud the developer for coming and trying to figure something out, but the metrics just don't add up to me.
So the answer on the question asked, the answer is, was it tenants to, who was the suspect?
Tenants to homeowners.
Tenants to homeowners
JK.
had the first right of refusal. That means,
To buy it at market.
right.
We
That
didn't
means
get
that
credit for this 75,000.
the 600,000 or, yeah. So I thought we were trying to ask the question, what's going to happen to the 600? And in a different way, we got the same answer.
Yeah, we are purely buying the 30 years of affordability.
Yeah.
I thought if we would get credit for that at the point of sale.
I get it.
First right, this is a good deal because we don't lose the subsidy.
I understand.
So when you compare it against other 30-year affordable projects, it doesn't
but it's not there.
Doesn't make sense to me.
Normalize the rough.
That's just, again, I'm just,
Yeah.
my take.
I was a little confused too, because it seemed to be that they would cater to senior housing, but how can you manage to that, really with the application process? I don't know, there came a letter from the Lawrence Douglas County Housing Authority of support, and it seemed to be really tailored to wanting to invite seniors or aging adults. There's no platting, no zoning, and no building permits as of yet, but this has been vacant for 20 years, so
But they have control.
they have control.
They own it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's close to a park. I mean, we talked about it, the donut shop. It'd be a good place for
Well, and this might
older
be
people to be.
This might
There's
be
some action, Lord.
move forward as a market rate
Yeah.
set of
it'll-
apartments, which is still going to help the
It'll
housing
work.
cause. It's just not going to be affordable, but it will help. It adds units to the market. So
The
there's
project,
that.
the
It'll
project will work.
The project will work financially without this, I think.
It just won't be marked as affordable.
It just won't be a capital A affordable.
Yeah,
yes.
Something I noticed, and I think in part they were the only one that provided kind of the requirements of applicants to live there, is they specifically had a requirement of a credit score of 650 or better. And I don't know if that is the common, normal credit score for things like this. It seems high to me in acknowledging that some populations, there are structural reasons in place that their credit scores are lower, and that this could present a barrier to actually targeting some of the populations that we're hoping to target with this project.
Yeah.
So that was something I noticed, but I didn't have the context for other projects or just about rental applications and credit scores in general to know if that was normal or not.
I think your sense is pretty good.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
okay,
good.
okay.
I didn't catch it.
That's really good.
I
That is
didn't
really
catch
good,
it.
too. Tenant screening process, what I wrote down too, you did catch that. But what they also put down is non-discrimination clause, which I have not seen in a tenant screening process yet. They mentioned credit score, but they also put there that the applicant, no discrimination as to the source of income shall be made. And that kind of
You like that?
parked my,
Yeah.
I like that. But the,
Yes,
the
yeah.
other things in the tenant
Well,
screening.
their materials, I mean, there's a bunch to like.
Yeah,
There's a lot of good things about the
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, the numbers don't work.
yeah.
Okay.
It was a beautiful project
It's
too.
cool.
The renderings were beautiful.
That's cool. That's cool.
So I agree, it's a great project. We'll have more discussion on that later on date when we decide our scores and give our recommendations. All right, that completes our new development project applications. How's everyone feeling? Feeling
Broke.
good about moving forward?
Broke. I feel broke.
We still got a
we had
couple
more
more applicants to go through, so hopefully you got some deep
Pull yourself
pockets.
together.
Consider.
I'll get the glue out.
All right. Okay, we're going to move into our rehab project applications. And the first one to consider would be the critical home repairs from Habitat for Humanity. The applicant is applying for rehabilitation, renovation, and adaptive reuse for affordable housing. This is an accessibility modification, and their request is $200,000. Any discussion on this application?
This is ARM we're talking about?
We are talking about ARM.
ARM?
I'm so
No.
sorry.
No,
Habitat
what-
for
what are
Humanity.
we talking about?
I'm so
The
sorry.
Critical home
Habitat.
repairs.
Critical
Yeah.
home repairs.
Okay, that's 100.
Okay.
Request is 100,
Request
right?
is 100. So let me just repeat that. I am so sorry. I'm
You're
moving
fine.
ahead.
I got
You're
lost.
fine.
Yeah, let me use that over again. Habitat for Humanity, critical home repairs. The request is $100,000 for rehabilitation, restoration, and adaptive reuse for affordable housing.
Got it.
So I did like that they weren't age restricted in who it was that they were helping. It felt like it was a little bit more accessible than some of the other folks that were asking to kind of do the same types of projects. And it's been, I don't know the right word, it's a lot of the funds that they've done these projects with in the past have been people of color, which I think is great. So I just wanted to throw those observations out there.
I'll give you my metrics here.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So for $100,000, they're talking about approximately 28 families, $3,600 per family. That's a pretty small subsidy. Those families must own the home. I like that because they're making an investment in someone's a family unit and a asset for that family, not just an asset for a landlord. I got nothing against landlords. Income qualified, a lot of accessibility, including mobile homes, which is where like our CBDG,
CDBG.
whatever, funds, sometimes they can't be used that way. So there's other funds out there that do stuff, but some of these are very unrestricted is what I would call them, which is good. And a lot of 0 to 30% AMI, which is, again, hitting the most needed demographic for us. So there's a lot I like about this, and they're a proven track record of delivering this year after year. So my take.
You gave a number, Monty, of 28 households they would serve. I have 30 homeowners that they serve, and they have 20 homeowners who are on a waiting list. So this money will go immediately to people who have been waiting for it for a while.
Yeah.
I also did some research on Lawrence data home ownership. There are 40,786 occupied housing units in Lawrence. 17,000 of those are owner occupied and 22,000 are renter occupied. So keeping people in housing, keeping folks in their homes is how we reduce homelessness.
Right. It's the upstream,
Situation, right?
It's the
Also-
upstream solution,
It's
right?
that macro thing. And also, to Andrew's point, there was consideration given to generational wealth through the accumulation of home ownership. We know that generational wealth is created on a lot of times through ownership of housing. And so to know that they have produced and made sure that Black, Indigenous, people of color's families have stayed home and have helped support them and have numbers represent that, I think is absolutely critical that we help support this critical home repairs to keep people housed. This is kind of the long-term macro kind of thing that we need to really consider. So,
And they're still paying property taxes.
yeah.
Right.
About
Stay on
that.
Tax rules, even better.
They're fighting the fight with the rest of us.
We know 1 in 4 homeowners are housing insecure. Home ownership in itself is still, does it preclude you from not being housing insecure, right? This takes a couple of things that can knock you off of that property being yours. So again, I'm taking up a lot of this conversation with
It's all right.
discussion, but I really am.
You get to vote too.
Happy with this application, and
Yeah.
I think it has good potential for our community. Is there any more discussion on this application? We'll move on. We now are at the Tenants of Homeowners application, or ARM, which is the Affordable Rental Management. This is also a rehab, renovation, and adaptive reuse for affordable housing accessibility modifications. They are requesting $200,000. They've received previous funding from AHAB in 2019, in 2021, and 2022. The Michigan 6 project was one that we recently helped supported, or Affordable Housing Advisory Board had recommended funding for. I'll stop talking about this project in open discussion.
I don't like 5 years. The idea of being able to buy the units, it sounds great, like we get the discount twice, that sounds awesome. But I struggle with understanding how a landlord that hasn't received any income from their place is now receiving income from their place and now wanting to get rid of that stream of income when it's going to increase in 5 years. The logic doesn't really make sense to me. I know it happened once, but that's kind of a small data pool to be investing a couple $100,000 for a couple of projects that we might have couple of units for 5 years. I just don't, it doesn't quite add up for me.
I think it's a cool concept. I think there'll be a lot of work to sell it, if that makes sense. I don't, in light of what the rest of stuff's on our plate, I'm having a little trouble with it myself.
I also think it's a really cool project.
Yeah.
5 years.
They're predicting 2 newly affordable units. I'm sorry, Mark.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to say is kind of continue to add on to what they'll be proposing, but please.
Yeah, so I looked at it, again, I tried to apply my metrics. So you're talking about 30,000 per bed, but that's a permanently affordable bed. So, not horrible. That's not bad to get
Yeah.
in the light of a permanently affordable 2 to 3 bedroom house. I look at this and I was like, okay, this is kind of a speculation fund. We don't have a project. We want to have the ability to act on a project if it comes along.
Yeah.
I'd be much more comfortable with this if we had a Michigan 6 and then they're asking for $100,000 to do a specific project. But I get the concept. I like what they're doing. I like the creativity of being able, I see this sometimes. You talk about a small demographic. This could be an older couple that has a house and just doesn't want to deal with their rental anymore, and they're looking for a clean way out, and they want to do something good, So instead of selling it on the market, they sell it to something like this. There's all kinds of scenarios that could come about, but they need to go find those and bring those. And often we've talked about whether this group should have a fund that's available for those kind of things that happen, and you have to react in order to make them happen. So they're trying to do that because we haven't been able to do it.
Yeah.
So I get that. I like it. But again, with the things that we have in the hopper that could put beds on the ground, I struggle with it.
When you said permanent, you mean if things go according to plans?
If they could work the right deal, they could
Gotcha.
do a permanent
Okay.
affordable. They didn't require that in this.
Right.
I acknowledge that.
Just wanted to make sure I was.
No, you read it right. You're completely right. But the last one they did was permanent.
It turned to
Turned to permanent.
I know that we had asked the applicant to give us an understanding of like how these become available. Like, are they looking online for vacant homes or
Right.
that's something? But I do want to say that there are 2 units that are now identified. I think that they added that to their application, but I did put that in. They have found units.
Okay.
So not that that makes a difference to your decisions, but
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, they are a low-risk oddity. I looked at their, tenants
Right.
homeowners do a lot of really great work, so
Yes, they do.
the audits are not like, tremendous. So what I thought was kind of would dissuade or make an impact on my vote was that though they prioritize women, head of household, and minor children, they cannot really predict if those would be the
Right.
families that they'd be serving, would be females head of household. As a lease date and the completion to confirm that eligibility could be very long to get those people in. I think I wrote that down. It makes sense to me in my brain. But I think that they would rely heavily on partnerships with Willow, on other organizations that could maybe help give the people, the homes that they need immediately. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah.
Their partnership with the organizations in our community would be definitely necessary to move this.
Yeah, they're a proven entity. Leah, can I, if they've identified projects, could we go back to them and ask what their subsidy would be for each project? Because maybe when we were awarding funding, if they have a project that's $50,000, then we could do one. We might be a consideration, but we don't know that without asking, if you need X for this one and X, Y for that one, that we could scale this, not just give them 200,000, but go, okay, we know if we give them 50, we would get this one project accomplished.
Yeah.
Kind of as a test run,
Are we,
I don't think.
I don't know if we have to do it today, but if you could get that, if
Yeah.
we could request that,
Oh, it looks like Nicholas is on
get a little more breakdown.
Zoom.
Yes, please. Nicholas Ward, could you give us answer some of these questions that we have for you? Or the application,
Sure.
rather? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christina. Yeah, so we have not identified specific units yet. We've been communicating with the city about units that they're aware of that are vacant. And then my process is a mix of utilizing partnerships and community resources to identify units. Neighborhood associations, we've had some luck with that. Although at the time when we identified some units earlier on with the neighborhood association, we didn't have funds to act on bringing those units into the ARM program. So that was kind of a null point in that case. But then at the same time, we're in this kind of catch-22 of identifying something, allocating time to that work, developing a contract, and then potentially not having access to the funds to realize it. So as Monty mentioned, it really is that case where we're imagining this fund, because we do that work in new construction, permanently affordable housing, but we're also looking at, we need to be rehabilitating existing units as well. So we are kind of ad hoc manifesting the fund where when we do find those projects, which hasn't, it's been mentioned, we have only done 2 of these and 1 through AHAB. It doesn't take us long once we start dedicating time to that search. But we want to add that to the work that we're doing consistently as a program that we're actively doing every year. And I may not have adequately answered your question, but please feel free to restate it, and I will.
How'd you do the other one that wasn't assisted through AHAB?
So that was just an opportunity that came to us through a church, and it was essentially that the unit wasn't really livable, and they were seeking funds to or support to be able to make that usable. We had families, of course, that are on our waiting list that we need to put somewhere. This was a 3-bedroom unit, so it's really kind of tasty for us because a lot of things, we have a lot of 3- and 4-bedroom families that it's much harder to help because those units don't come available as often. And so
How'd you fund it?
So that one was just through revolving project funds that we had as our organization that we would normally dedicate to other projects, but we saw this as kind of a worthy cause. And then because of that, we also were able to partner. ECAN was able to do some weatherization updates. I believe that unit got a new furnace in addition to the work that we did there. So that was one that was going to be sitting around for a long time without updates, and now it's functioning really well. That one remains in the ownership of that church. But of course, we always do sign within the contract the first right of purchase, and that's minus the subsidy from market rate that was initially put into those units. And so we're not double paying on that. That subsidy is being realized for that 5-year period, and then kind of realized double when that purchase happens. And so that's part of our plan.
How long have they had renters in that unit as a church?
I think that one was in 2021, so that's 3 years now.
Okay. And they still haven't mentioned planning on selling it, or?
Yeah, I mean, that one's an interesting case because I don't know if the church as an organization feels those same stresses as an individual who has a precarious unit. And that one, a lot of these come out of, it's about us being prepared and equipped to realize opportunities when they come before us too. It does feel, and of course this just happens, but it feels tough when we have to say no to really good opportunities for affordable housing. And through this proposal, we're trying to be able to manifest that. There is, and as you've seen, there's a lot of stuff getting torn down in certain neighborhoods right now, and new larger things being built. Some of those need to go, but some of those, if we could partner with people, could be rehabilitated as well.
Nicholas, I recall you saying at the last meeting that the 5 years of guaranteed affordability for the projects that have happened so far in this program is somewhat based on the fact that there was less work and so lower subsidy was needed in order to rehabilitate those, because that affordability is subsidized back by the landlord through, like, you are making it equal through that like affordability cost. I'm not saying it right, but I hope you're following me. Okay. So I recall you saying though that if the costs of the rehab project were higher, then because of needing to equalize, that the period of affordability may actually be longer in order to realize that, and so that would then be written into the contract. Have you done the math where if there was a $100,000 subsidy to rehab a project, what length of time would be needed in order to regain that affordability on that home?
Yeah, so it's highly variable, and that's part of, I mean, what I love about this program is its ability to be flexible and its contractual relationship to the person that it's, or the entity that it's partnering with. Like you said, I think the one on Clayton Court, I believe we put maybe 45,000 into, and that was initially going to be a 5-year term of affordability. If we're looking at putting 100,000 in a house, then the options that we have are that, one, it could increase to a 10-year period of affordability, or it could also do something where the rents get more deeply cut. So it goes from $1,350 a month, and if it was 5 years, maybe it goes down to $500 a month. But if it was 10 years, maybe it's at $750 a month. So there's kind of modulation, and I'm not being exact with the numbers there, but just giving an example of the amount of time versus the amount of reduction, or in partnership with the amount of reduction in rent, how that little equation works out to make sure that we're making back that subsidy or more. So does that make sense? I mean, if somebody was willing to say like, look, we don't need anything out of this for a 5-year period, then I mean that 100,000 could be made back over a 5 or 6 year period. But if they need to get $600 a month out of that place that they have, well, yeah, they're going to be looking at a 10 to 12 year
Nicholas?
Period of affordability.
Nicholas?
Yes.
If we wanted to provide one opportunity, you had one opportunity, what kind of funding would that take? Is that a $50,000 number? Is that a $100,000 number? What do you think, you having done a couple of these?
Yeah.
What would give you that opportunity to deal with the next one that comes up?
So let me think of the most concise way I can answer that.
I'm looking for a number, Nicholas. That's the concise way to answer that number.
I would say for what we really want to be engaged with, $100,000 is the maximum of what we want to get into and mess with the unit for. If you're looking beyond that, I mean, you're really considering that maybe that place shouldn't be a standing unit anymore, depending on what it is. I would say a comfortable amount for us to get in, do significant repairs, potentially, a roof is going on, new windows, other considerations
We get it.
I would say 60. I would say 60 to 80 would put us in a really good place to have some flexibility with the type of unit that we're bringing online.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I know that was a tough question, but we're in a tough spot.
Speaking of tough
I understand.
spots,
Thank you.
Thank you for your context, and thank you for your additional comments. We're going to move on. We've got half of our applicants to still look at, and we want to make sure we give them each time. So thank you again, Nicholas, and we'll be moving on to our next application, and that will be the Polar Lofts, Flint Hills. This is also a rehabilitation mixed-use development in East Lawrence. 2 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms available, and it's requesting $19,785. Any conversation on this application?
I mean, it feels pretty doable. To keep some units livable that we've already got available in the market, $20,000 seems pretty reasonable when I was looking at everything, but that's just my observation.
Yeah.
I think the conversation that I'm having with myself on this is, what is the responsibility of this board in continuing to subsidize projects that we've already subsidized? I mean, is this a situation of double dipping, a language that we've used previously, or what is our responsibility? And I have not come to an answer on this personally, but it's a conversation I've been having with myself.
Just a question, as a person that's new to the board, are there other rehab projects or others that have been executed and then circled back and requested funds for their own repairs? Because I mean, like, part of me thinks maybe that's what the profits from the project are to be reserved for, like, with all due respect. But then also at the same time, like, is this the norm, I guess is what I'm asking. Because it's cheap,
I don't recall ever having one come back. I struggle with the same question you struggle with. That should be an operational cost. If this project's going to go under for $20,000, there's a much, much bigger problem.
The Flint Hills, they do have developer fees on their other, I would assume that the developer fees are congruent with the other projects that they've listed, and they're making $700,000 on the projects that they're going into.
So that's a good assumption, except often we see developers defer their development, taking of their development fee until
The end.
the end of the project. So he
Creates equity.
creates equity in the thing. So he didn't take a fee at the front of the project. They'll take that fee when they sell the project in 30 years or
Understood.
20 years.
Okay.
So it's kind of, they didn't get that up front.
They're not just pocketing $700,000.
Yeah, and then asking for 20.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not doing that.
Well, that feels a little.
Yeah. No, you got to know. It's a great question.
We all struggle with your conversation with yourself, and I do too. On the other hand, having been on the CDBG board years ago, some of these home repairs of which are all embedded in all these requests at $3,000, $5,000, all valuable, keeping people in homes, good stuff. There's frequent flyers in there. We're not clean here. We spent money on the same house more than once. So it's not easy. The only thing that makes it easy is this $20,000. If it were $250 for a new AC unit for the whole building, we'd be haranguing a lot about this. So I'll probably support it, but
Resentfully.
only because I know we have funded over time some of these homes, again, for the right reasons.
However, I am cognizant that while other processes may have done that, it sounds like this would be a first for AHAB to do, and thus it could be setting a precedent. So I am just cognizant of that as part of my decision-making through this process.
As a developer, you take risk and you get reward. This is part of the risk side of that, to me. I mean, everybody that develops takes risk and they get rewarded for that risk at some point. So, I don't know. I struggle with it.
Good conversation. Are there any additional comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next application for modifications, or is that all that we have? No, rent and utility systems. And so the next, our next application theme, or rather our voucher rental system project applications. And I'll pause here because we're now moving into a different area, but I wanted to kind of do a temperature check of everyone. Give us some time to assess where we are. Okay, and move forward. So now we're going to their voucher rental assistant project applications.
So there's no public comment on A, B, or C?
I'm sorry. Don't
be sorry.
I'm kind of going to have to push back on you a little bit. We've had public comment in the 3 minutes of our comment.
Is there going to be public comment at the end of these agenda items? I was thinking that maybe they're kind of comment from the public. There's so many of us. on A and then on B.
There's no further public comment.
I'm speaking to the.
Yeah, and I could take this comment, and I would really appreciate if we could have a dialogue that includes the time that we have
Ma'am,
and
when
be
you eject people
respectful.
from meetings electronically, there's no room for dialogue. The board needs to
Stephen,
know that
we've
you had me electronically ejected from the meeting
We've
because I
had
was
your
raising my
public
hand to
comment
talk.
for 3 minutes, and everyone is given the same 3 minutes, and
Ma'am,
so that's
again,
where I
was
have to stop
ejected
you.
for raising my hand.
Mr. Watts, public comment is over. We're going to need to call the police if you don't refrain from speaking.
To do what?
We have asked you to stop talking. Public
right
comment is
here?
over.
Listen to this. I asked
pause
a
for
question.
our
Is there
meeting.
going to be public comment?
If we could take a 5-minute pause and cut off the video, please.
Public comment.
Are we going to take public comment after this meeting is over? That's
we coming back?
Yeah, Kurt, whenever, thank you. And thank you all. We commence our AHAB October 29th Advisory Board meeting. And thank you. We left off, we're examining the voucher rental assistant project applications. We have Housing Stabilization Collaborative of Douglas County to consider first. Is there discussion on this application?
I'm so conflicted on this project. Like, I know that they help a lot of people, and I know that when it comes to how you award what they award, there's not a more equitable, like a more fair way to do it than a lottery system. But it's a very short-term solution, and so I struggle to see somebody that needs the help in June not also needing the help again in September, October at some point, and not knowing if they can count on it or not. I don't know, I don't know. I know that they do really good work, and I just hate the randomness of the help that it gives, but I don't know a better way to do it either, so. And it's very short-term solution. I don't know. Now I'm just ranting, so I'm done, but I just need to share this.
No. And for further context, 305 households will be served, 277 of those households through short-term assistance, 28 households through medium assistance.
Okay,
It's
maybe I
adding
missed that, yeah.
It's continuing to add to what you.
Medium meaning like 3 to 6 months, or?
Be less than a year.
I think it was up to 12 months.
Okay.
Like it went like through a declining subsidy process. I think
Which-
they're still figuring out what exactly that looks like, was kind of what I gathered.
Yeah, I think it's less than a year because their funding's
Yeah.
annual, so
Yeah.
they don't even know what their budget is
Can't
until.
promise you next year.
This is 50, if we awarded 550, this is 50% of that agency's funding, to give you perspective.
For this, yeah.
Is this somehow replacing when the state stepped in on COVID rental support and reimbursement? Is it
So,
somewhat grabbing
originally-
some of those needs
Yeah, so I'll give you a little history.
as a landlord?
This started kind of during COVID,
Yeah.
and we had a lot of immediate need. And this agency came in and started requesting funding, and we funded at different levels. It's been increasing over the years. They've done good work, and I think during COVID, we were like, we had these people in immediate need. They had some ARPA funding, we had ARPA funding, so we awarded funds. There has always been this debate whether this is providing affordable housing or stopgapping. But especially during COVID, we felt there was such a need that we needed to do this. And now we're at this point. Last year, we asked them to replace our funding, and they were not able to do that. At least doesn't appear they were able to do that. I would struggle pulling the rug completely out from under them. To me, I voted against the 550 funding last time because I thought it was too much. I thought but I was one vote,
I get it.
So I get that. So to me, I'm going to consider recommending
funding.
a lower amount of funding to give them a soft landing and give them another year to find another funding source, because some way they've got to fund besides us.
Yeah.
But I just don't have the heart. I don't have the heart to yank it to zero.
Exactly.
I don't.
Taking
They
consideration.
do too much good work.
Absolutely. There are committed revenues from Douglas County. There's $342,000 that they got from Douglas County as commitment, and $55,000 from grants. As a community, we need to step in and probably help to continue supporting rents and utility assistance, because it is something as like when
keeps
you're
people-
home ownership and you getting your, HVAC
Right, it keeps people
repaired,
housed.
keeps you in space until, the next emergency.
Right.
So I'd also toggle with this one a little bit too. But there's $1,803 affordable housing advisory dollars per household that receive that.
Right.
I'm
It's
sorry,
not a huge
house per
section.
household. Cost per household is $1,803. So it is. If that math makes math to you.
Right.
Well, and I think the other interesting thing with this project is that, it's really two completely separate aspects within it. So there's the short term, like very short term, immediate, like crisis prevention, and that which is the lottery system based on prioritized by housing status. And then there's the second part that's the medium term, where they're actually getting the people from the eviction rolls, and it is actually over 24 months, not 12 months. I wrote down. And so, like, they're helping to a more longer term stabilization process. And so it's kind of like two projects within one program. I mean, really. And I believe that the funding that is requested, that they earmarked a certain proportion of that or amount of that specifically for that longer term program. So I don't know, like, as this committee or advisory board continues to think and deliberate, if it's possible, if we want to allocate funds, a specific amount of funds to a specific aspect within that project, or if it needs to be not conditional. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
I was just thinking.
It's a pocket of organization, so it's a lot of different organizations. But I think we also have Gabby online. Maybe Gabby, if you're able to provide more context, we'd love to hear that. Thank you.
I don't have anything further to add, but if there's additional questions, please let me know.
Okay. Did you have any questions or any additional comments to ask for Gabby while we have them here?
Do you happen, are we at time?
No, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Do you know how much of the funds that you're requesting is going to go towards the medium term versus the short-term assistance?
I think one of the board members shared that the 277 number, along with the other number that I can't remember off the top of my head, 28. So 277 households would receive the shorter term assistance, and roughly 28 would be receiving the longer term, which, as the board member said, is the 3 to 24 months.
Right. I was asking about dollar amounts that would be going towards each one. I guess I could do the math on the 277 times the 1,800, which I can do. I was just wondering if you had it.
Yeah, there's an average payment of, I think it's $1,614. And so that's the short-term assistance though. We don't necessarily have a longer-term assistance because we haven't done that programming as long. But we are working with Catholic Charities of Northeast Kansas and other organizations that have provided the medium-term assistance as what is seen before you. I will say that an intent of the program, both the medium-term and the short-term, is to then connect people to resources for longer-term assistance, like the Housing Authority Voucher Program.
We ran the math real quick. So basically it's 450 in short-term assistance and 100 in long-term. Basically. Those are really rough, but
Okay.
give you an idea.
Just curious, do you have any data on how many folks you've helped on the medium term that have needed further assistance once that period is completed versus the folks that don't?
No households that have gone through the medium-term assistance program have received assistance beyond 5 months.
And they haven't applied?
Granted, it has not been very many.
Okay. And they haven't applied for any assistance thereafter?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Gabby. Any additional questions that we could ask Gabby while she's here, or any other discussion on this application? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next application for voucher rental assistance. This will be the New Horizons, the housing vouchers. Their request is for $50,000 in housing vouchers. I would say there's 81% success rate in transitioning households to permanent housing.
A huge amount of funding.
Yeah, I like it too because they serve very low-income households, and currently they already have 10 on a waiting list, and they can serve 5 families immediately. I think it's a good application to fund.
Next.
Well, I wanted to also mention that there's permanent voucher.
Oh, yeah.
There is permanent voucher potential here. I don't know, but for ongoing support, as long as the criteria and eligibility are met, the household or the participants, they can participate in this program forever. I mean, if their eligibility, hopefully that's not the case, but this provides that cushion and support longevity-wise. So if that helps to make your recommendations later on. But yeah, okay. Seeing no other discussion, we can move on to our next application. And that completes our applications for voucher assistant project applications. Excuse me, the next themed applications would be the accessibility modification project applications. And we'll move into the Affordable Housing Program Independence Inc.'s application for consideration and for discussion. So a little bit of context here. The request is for $75,000. Independence Inc. assists aging adults and people with disabilities who have low income in Lawrence, Kansas, make needed accessibility modifications to their homes. 15 households will receive accessibility modifications with this request.
Filled the silence, sorry. The proven track record for these folks, they've delivered, 15 or so units a year, 10 to 15 units, about 5,000 per household served. Again, keeping people in their houses, and then the income eligible, requirement to meet this, and you have to be, I believe, owners, if I remember right. You have to own your house, is that right? Or they do rentals too? They do rentals too.
It's a good program.
It's a good program and a proven, they've delivered year after year a number of units. Just also scalable. So if you gave them $50,000, they would do just, that many fewer houses.
Right.
But we would still get some on the ground, so.
Yeah. Also thought they didn't put in their application is a community engagement aspect of it. I know that Independence Inc., along with another facilitator, was able to give us a presentation about aging in place and about all of the things that we were kind of questioning as it came from universal design and plans. They gave us examples, how they're using that and how we could see universal design implemented in other projects. So they did the community education piece too, which I think is really important. Okay. Next application, if there's no other discussion, we can move on. The next application comes to us from Senior Resource Center, and this is to modifications and repairs for low-income seniors.
Another great project.
Mm-hmm. 0 to 30% of AMI served is their scope. Request is for $53,000. Is that right? Yes, that's right. We've given in the past, I think Affordable Housing Advisory Board has given in the past in 2023. Yes, for something similar, a modification and rehab.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting, that funding lasted 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think this could be scalable. If you wanted to give them $25,000, we'd probably get a year's worth of help versus 2 years, depending on how you look at that. The $53,000 throws off my math. So, but anyway, personal problem, I guess.
I was off $215 for a long time.
Are there any items or any things you have questions about for this application? I believe we do have Megan Poindexter here, but if we don't have any questions, we don't need to bring Megan into the conversation.
Good project.
So the $53,000 that we gave them in 2023, do they still have some of those funds available? And that's why we're saying it only lasted 2 years? Or am I misunderstanding what we were discussing there? Just curious.
Yeah, they've still been using the funds from 2023 to do projects throughout this year. And I believe that, perhaps this is something that Megan could clarify. I believe that they're reaching a zero balance. Megan, would you be able to address that question?
Yes, I was stepping out of the middle school orchestra
Oh,
event that
I'm sorry. Thank you.
at so that I could hear you guys and talk. That is correct. So the question was, are we out of funds? Is that correct?
Well, basically, we did the Affordable Housing Advisory Board granted you guys $53,000 last year, and then there was some discussion of that lasted 2 years, and I just wanted to understand how that works if the funds were granted.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So the grant was 2 years ago. The first year we didn't spend any of it. We didn't have any requests that really fit the criteria for the first few months. And so it was a little bit of a slow start. And so taking that into account, I don't know if you can really say that it was the full 2 years that it appears, because this is a program that's in response to requests that we cannot find funding anywhere else. So these are the things that just don't have any other resources elsewhere. When we would receive a request, we would first kind of seek out what else was out there that could potentially help that individual to kind of help these dollars stretch a little bit further. We also would work with the homeowners to see what they could contribute to it. That helped to stretch the dollars a little bit. We had no idea, and this is such an experiment. We had no idea how it would go. And what I can say is that as we've moved forward, the money has gone more quickly over the last year. We do have a little bit of it left, not much. It's almost all claimed or projects that are currently in process. I mean, if you guys decided to do the full 50,000, then we would stretch it as far as we could. If you decided that you wanted to do 25,000, then we would do $25,000 worth of requests. It's really kind of a
Megan.
whatever you've got, we'll apply it appropriately to the folks who ask us.
Megan, how long have you been there?
At SRC?
Yeah.
6 years.
Okay. I thought you just got there. I'm lost.
I know, it feels like it sometimes.
Okay. Is there any other additional questions we have maybe for Megan, or any comments that we want to make on this application before we move on to the next? No? Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to our very last and final application. And we've had such really great conversations about each and every one. Thank you all. This is our final, and it comes as a community engagement project application from Lawrence Tenants. And I will just do a little bit of an overview while we're pulling up some additional information. Okay, great. This is an education for all. There's an update because there was an ask for some additional information and clarity and context about the structure. There's like objective and this kind of a timeline too. So the request is for $170,000 to advance racial equity in housing and communicating advancement on affordable housing outreach and engagement. So I wanted to bring to everyone's attention the Lawrence Tenants 2025 Community Engagement Plan, because we had asked them to, we needed more clarification. I don't think we even asked them, but they came back with a structure and a template for us to examine. And I would like for us to kind of go through a little bit of the goals, have some discussion on the community engagement plan while we have this in front of us. And so we can see by the end of 2025, 400 tenants will increase their knowledge of their rights and resources. We also have continuing into the years, their goals, and how they will reach those goals and what the measurement actions are embedded within. So I think each of us has these emails, but if there's anything that stood out to you in this timeline or the further instruction that we were given by how they have planned to reach their goals and designed by the curriculum and the educational outreach, that we could talk about that today as well. But is there anything that stuck out to you? Let's have a discussion on that.
I just want to thank Lawrence Tenants for going back and doing this work. I really appreciate it. I think it provides a lot of additional information about your plan and, shows your devotion and intent to the project.
Go ahead, no problem.
One thing I was hoping to see in this plan, it's like, what's gonna happen after 1 year when the funds run out. I was hoping to see like some kind of fundraising activities, which wasn't included. So that was like my biggest concern. What's gonna happen after a year from now?
Do you want to see if the applicant can respond?
And I think we have Vince Munoz. Vince Munoz. If you're able to take and stand questions, which I say that you are, we invite you into this conversation.
Did you hear the question, Vince?
Yeah, was it about, and sorry, I'm kind of sick, so forgive my voice. Was that about like future funding?
Yes. So the funding you requested is just for 1 year. So do you have any plan about what's going to happen after 1 year when the fund run out?
Yeah, so we have like identified some like other funding in broad kind of strokes, but a lot of it is contingent upon like receiving past funding. And I mentioned this at the last meeting, that there's kind of like this chicken and egg problem where like you need to have an initial grant in order to receive kind of some of those longer term grants. Like there's like an organization called I can't remember it off the top of my head, like Funders for Housing Opportunity or something to that effect, that has some grants that would be really applicable to us. And that would be even more than what we're asking for now. But they do expect that you've had like past experience with grants. And so we have looked into that, but we can't really say that we're going to be eligible for them until we received something initially, if that makes sense.
Vince, I appreciate the metrics and with the specific numbers as part of your goals. I'm curious, have you been collecting information thus far on some of these metrics, and how do these numbers compare to some of your prior efforts or current efforts?
Yeah, so we sort of extrapolated like these numbers from our current numbers. We do keep track of like how many people we've reached at events, how many conversations we've had, what those have kind of been like. And so yes, like for example too, in the timeline, especially if you think about like, I think I put in June of 2025, like there's a few events that we've been to in the past with like Lawrence Pride, for example. And last Lawrence Pride, we reached more than 200 Lawrenceans. So that's like where that number exactly comes from. And so these have been broadly kind of extrapolated from our past experience. Yeah.
Okay.
This is just a suggestion for your engagement plan. It's good to see all these numbers. Like for instance, goal number 2, you said by the end of 2025, 400 tenants will increase their knowledge, right? But in the goal number 1 is you're gonna reach 1,000 renters. So that means 600 renters will not increase their knowledge. So it doesn't really look that positive. So instead of giving the 400 numbers, actually one thing you can do is something like 75% of the tenants that attended will increase their knowledge about the rent rights, rather than give its raw numbers.
Are you a teacher?
This is actually something I do.
I know, I'm kidding you.
Well, I like this. I toggle with the final like negotiation part of this because this is a solid pilot project for the city. We've been talking about community engagement. You are raising awareness. I was wondering if like there's some way you can go in there and similarly kind of do some restructuring of the plan or outreach, was maybe decreasing the Action Network subscription. You get a $30,000 budget for materials. Maybe that could be something we talk about. It's a nonprofit that status that could be crunched down. Those numbers could be crunched a little bit. But there are many scholarly journals in public health that you can access to speak on social benefits and costs of large-scale education on the issue. Building greater awareness, exposing diversity has an impact on personal outcomes, and community involvement is imperative at every stage. And it looks like you have every stage that you are looking at, projecting this out. It's education as outreach. So, yeah, I'm a proponent. I'm so down for this. This is really great. And so hopefully we can negotiate something that makes sense when we get to that point to give them things they would need for this application to be successful.
Yeah, I think this aligns with one of our goals quite well.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm nervous because it's a pilot kind of thing. We haven't done this. I certainly have no expertise. I understand housing. I don't understand this part. It's not the thing. But I hope we can come up with something. I'm with you. I think we need to figure out some way to figure out how this moves forward at some scale.
This is that risk rewards.
Right.
My limited experience with startups is, at some point, people have to make a financial investment to start it. And I see the only financial investment is ours. And so I'm kind of turned off by it. The concept's great, the information's great, the need is tremendous. So I say that. Those are my comments.
I have a question, and I'm not sure if it makes sense, so please do call me on that. I see that you're targeting 400 people to increase their knowledge. I'm wondering if that then translates into overturned rent application rejections due to the sources of income. I know that was a big thing that you guys were educating on. The rights people had was people can't be rejected because of where their income for. So I was wondering if there's any numbers on how many times that has happened and then been overturned because of the education and outreach you guys do. I think that would make me a lot more excited to see the final practical, applicable results of the education, of the educating. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that I mentioned in the previous meeting was that this is such like a new ordinance that we don't have a lot of data on it. We do know it's in the public record that there has been one instance of enforcement that the city has enforced against a landlord, actually taken the landlord to court and said a tenant has reported to us that you violated this ordinance. They knew about their rights, they reported it, and that's how the city knew. And so we know that it's been enforced once, but it only went into effect July basically, or July of last year, not July of this year. But it was only enforced this year for the first time because there's so little awareness. And so, yeah, no one has done any sort of survey research on what the current landscape of people's knowledge is. So that could be another thing that we could collect. And to the point, and this kind of gets to a question that was asked by another, or sort of a comment from another board member, is that and yes, it would have been, we should have converted these to percentages, but this is kind of the 400 represents the pre and post surveys that we hope to get, or notes from the educator about a specific tenant. We hope that it's more than 400 tenants, but we don't think we'll get 100% completion for surveys. I mean, that's just always the case. And so just to answer those kind of questions together, there's just not a lot of data that anyone has in this county. But we know that the one instance of enforcement has been because someone knew their rights and initiated that enforcement. And then also just one final thing to say about the kind of funding questions. Yes, we included in the in response to the written portion of the application, if you could only fund one educator, we could work with that. And if you needed to reduce the 30,000, to half of that, 15,000, we could work with that as well. We've been working with nothing except our own sort of personal paying for things as we've gone. So we can work with what we're given. We do need enough for the one educator, obviously, to pay them for the full year. That's the 70,000 I think is essential, but we can kind of work from there. And then, like I said, yeah, and I apologize for not including some of those more specific like funding sources that we pursue outside, but there are other groups, you know, I mean, there's Casey tenants, for example, across the state line. They have funding from like numerous streams, from fundraising, from voluntary member dues, and primarily from like nonprofit foundations. And so there's kind of like a model that exists, even though it hasn't existed here. To say that this is like completely novel is not, it's only true in this county. It's not necessarily true in the region. We do see some other examples of that. So I hope that answers multiple questions at the same time.
The person that was able to enforce that policy, did they attend any of you guys' education last year or this year?
I can't recall if they did specifically, but they were aware of their rights and like kind of affirmatively knew that their rights were being violated. But, you know, for how many people don't know currently, and therefore like the ordinance is not really being fully utilized because they don't know is kind of our point. So I don't know if that person specifically went to one of our events, but they clearly knew and affirmatively said, like, I know what the law is and here's, you know, how we're going to enforce it.
I was just hoping you could say that 100% of the times it was enforced was because of our education.
That's a good metric.
Yeah. Although, so
I do want to talk a little bit too about like some of the grassroots and how because Lawrence Tenants is not a new organization. It may be newer to some folks, but it's like that grassroots, you know, foot in the ground kind of movement that we have come to understand is necessary in our community. Could you talk a little bit about the materials and the outreach that you've been able to support and how you've been able to support it up to this point? Because you have been doing some work and it has been substantial. How have you been financing all of the work that you've been generating thus far?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we've been just like, those of us who are regular members of the organization have just been paying for things out of our own pockets as we've gone along. Like, you know, I've paid for things to be printed. You know, I've paid for like pizza to be delivered to the library for some of our events. Like we have parents within our organization who have brought like children's materials, because we had like a little parent corner at one of our events to try to make our event more accessible to renters who have children. And so we've paid for like event reservation space just as we've gone. I mean, all of our members have like voluntarily contributed. And so, I mean, we don't have like a formal system of like voluntary member dues or anything like that. But, you know, people have been pretty generous with like what we've had. And we've like partnered with other organizations too. We've like taken advantage of like when other events have been happening. For example, Kansas Legal Services did a, get your security deposit back workshop to educate renters about like how do you best go about making sure you get your security deposit back if you insist that, you know, there's only been normal wear and tear in your unit. And so we've been able to table at an event that another organization already paid for the space in the library. We just kind of like tagged along. And so through a combination of our personal financial contributions to this cause and also through partnerships with existing organizations in the region and in Douglas County, we've just kind of made it work and just kind of gone ad hoc as needed. And so that's basically how we've done it.
Thank you. Did you have any other questions? I'm sorry, I might have cut you off.
Oh, no. I was just going to make a comment that another very desirable outcome of educating the community through grassroots organizations is putting pressure on the landlords to not engage in the harmful practices in the first place. And so, I mean, our hope is that we won't have anyone bringing a court case against a landlord because we've put pressure on the landlords to not engage in those harmful practices. So I think that's a longer term outcome of efforts like this that may not show up in the numbers because it is a confounding factor.
Yeah, it's a power balance.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for all for the discussion and the extra comments. We have a few minutes left. I wanted us to be able to move on to our next agenda item, which is a discussion of the application scoring and project prioritization. That's
with 2 minutes.
Oh, Leah.
Yeah.
So I'll just Can I just make a couple notes? So just as a reminder, please email me your scoring matrix with your recommendations by 5 p.m. on November 4th. I did not state this at the last meeting, but on the worksheet where you actually put in your recommended dollar amount, you should zero that out.
We have to balance the budget?
You have to balance the budget.
Not fair. Not fair.
Yeah, so if you want to leave money remaining on the table, that's fine, but please don't recommend allocations above what we have, and then that is what we will use to start the meeting with. Are there any questions about how to score or provide those recommendations? If questions come up, just feel free to email me.
So recommended dollar will be for every single project?
Yeah, so you'll...
Regardless the score?
What's that?
Regardless of their score?
Yeah, so you can put recommended $0.
Oh, I see, that's how you say it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I get it.
You just get to allocate the $1.2 million how best you think. I mean, the scores are a guideline to help us understand and talk through the projects, but they're, just because it has the highest score doesn't mean it has to get the most dollars.
But in a way, they're not all graded against the same curve because certain projects, like some of the stuff that got filled in for me, answered the questions.
Right.
That dictates a certain number of points.
Right.
And so really, there's about 5 or 6 variables actually for us to adjust. Anyway, you know that, you're the teacher.
All right. Well, thank you for that discussion on application scoring and project prioritization. November 4th at 5 are when those are due. Please submit yours by then. And moving forward into our calendar, our next November 11th Affordable Housing Advisory Board meeting, we'll be voting on the Trust Fund Awards then. And then December 9th, going down the line, we will be meeting again. The tenant experience report presentation and community land trust presentation.
Madam Chair,
Wrapping that up,
I have one question.
I would definitely, yes, welcome, Lauren.
I want advice, regardless of the amount, is showing support for LIHTC projects helpful to them on their applications? Yes or no?
Support from the city can be shown in ways additional to providing funding. So there were just a few projects awarded by KHRC, and the support shown by the city was a letter of recommendation, not trust funds. So
they're gonna.
So city support does make a difference, but that doesn't have to be monetary support in order to get this points for it.
So there are other players representing the city that issue a letter for a LIHTC application. I didn't know that. It's HRC?
Oh, yeah.
No, the housing initiatives division I still work with developers from other projects that are not submitting applications for trust funds.
Yeah, but I don't know that. So that's why I'm asking the question. We're not the only way that support is shown.
Correct.
For an applicant?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right.
Okay.
Clarifying question, is it helpful?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move to adjourn. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you again November 11th. Yes.
Thank you.
Sounds
Well-run meeting. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Christina.
Is there value in having